Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your marriage without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired and taken care of and special, even if it feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm sharing 5 ways to fix a sexless marriage. My guest, Sophia's husband, said he wanted a divorce, then moved out 2 days a week and was having an affair. Her marriage felt like a mess, but Sophia made some big changes. And today her husband is back home and they snuggle and they are so close. She's going to tell us how she did it so you can do it too. The Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award goes to a pithy quote about what strong women do, but it's actually the opposite of what I see truly strong women doing every day. All of that's coming up, but first, let's talk about 5 ways to fix a sexless marriage. If you're anything like me, you love feeling desired. And when the physical passion is missing in your relationship, or if it's rare, then it makes you feel undesirable, which feels awful. Then you wonder if it's because of the extra pounds or the wrinkles that are turning him off, or maybe because there's something wrong with him that he's not interested anymore. Either way, it's lonely, painful, and confusing. But it doesn't have to stay stuck that way. Here are 5 ways to fix your sexless marriage and bring back the passion. Number 1, use the best aphrodisiac on the planet for men. Yes, there is an aphrodisiac for men, and most women don't know about it, or they don't know what it means, just like I didn't know either in the bad old days. The aphrodisiac is respect. It's respect. Respect means you expect the best outcome from him, not the worst. It means apologizing that you didn't trust his thinking, or you told him what to do at work, or you told him how to be a dad. And if you're thinking you don't respect your husband right now because of all the ways that he's disappointed you, well, then you have tremendous power to break the logjam by deciding to respect him again. Well, how do you do that? Number 2, that leads to the second way to fix a sexless marriage, which is to make a list of all the things you're grateful for about your husband, like maybe a list of 20 or so things about him that you're grateful for. If you can't think of anything right now because you're feeling so resentful, well, that's a very hard and heavy place to be. I'm sorry you're going through that, but I'm going to invite you to really get creative and think of at least 3 things, even though there are many things you wish he would do differently than he is right now. Think of at least 3 things, because the number 3 thing to do, the third thing, is to fix a sexless marriage by expressing your appreciation to your husband out loud or by text at least 3 times a day. I'm talking about expressing sincere gratitude that he takes out the trash, that he makes dinner, that he went to the store to get watermelon. Whatever you can think of 3 a day and express those to him. The 4th way to fix a sexless marriage is to stop pushing for sex by being receptive instead of aggressive. Receptivity is the essence of femininity, and this is what men are fundamentally attracted to. So being receptive is a way to be more attractive. So instead of saying, like I used to say, we should have sex. Yeah, it's embarrassing, but I used to do that. Instead of doing that, you might be flirty and just flash him, or jump in the shower with him, or talk about how amorous you're feeling. But you'll want to do that without expectation, because control, it's not attractive. How do you lose that expectation if it already feels like a herd of elephants in the room, though, right? That can be hard. Well, I'm glad you asked, because number 5 is that it all comes down to finding you're happy by treating yourself well, in my experience. And only you know what that means for you. It could be a bubble bath, but it might be a jujitsu class. It could be getting your nails done, or it might be getting your hands dirty growing vegetables. Maybe it's playing with your pets or tickling the ivories. It could be watching a rom-com or talking to a tree. If you're tempted to skip this step, well, you're not alone. So many students want to skip this step and get right to the part where they say or do the thing that will make their husband desire them. But this is the step in my experience. Nothing is as appealing to a husband as a happy, smiling wife who respects him. If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. My guest Sophia's husband said he wanted a divorce, and then he moved out 2 days a week and was having an affair. Her marriage felt like a complete mess, but Sophia made some big changes. And today, her husband's back home and they snuggle and are so close. She's going to tell us what she did so you can do it too. Hello, Sophia. Welcome. Thank you for coming on the Empowered Wife podcast.
Hi, Laura. It's a pleasure to be here.
So great to have you. I'm excited to hear your whole story. So tell us what things were like in the bad old days. What was going on?
Okay, so I think I'll just take you back to the beginning very briefly of our relationship. So I met my husband when I was on vacation, and we had just like a whirlwind sort of romance. And I moved back to my country where I'm from, and he stayed. And we did a lot of Skyping because that's kind of what you did back in the day. And I said to him, I think you should come over here. And he was like, okay. So after 3 weeks of knowing each other, he hopped on a plane and he flew over to where I was living. And that was it. Like that pretty quickly started our path to marriage. And from the get-go, I was very much like, this is what I want. And this is the kind of relationship I want. And I want to have kids really soon. And if you're not on board with that, then you need to let me know. And I was just very pushy. All of this, I kind of, I noticed kind of upon reflection. At the time, I just thought I knew what I wanted. And
Right.
Yeah, so we had been together for about, I don't know, 5 years, I think. And things were getting like he was getting a little bit restless. And we were trying to decide what our next moves were. And we had 3 kids at that point, very quickly back to back, or my idea. And we decided that it'd be fun if we moved from where we were living to another state so we could have an adventure and he could have a different job. And when we did that, things kind of really started to change. We moved away from our family and we moved on our own, as it were. And I think what happened in that was a lot of the cracks that were already there just started to kind of show a little bit more. And at that point, I started pushing really hard to have another baby. And he was very resistant to that. But I kept on pushing. And eventually he sort of succumbed to the pressure of having this 4th baby that he kind of made clear he didn't really want, but he would do it if it was something that I wanted. And at that point, it really was something. I wanted a big family. My younger sister at that point was terminally ill with cancer. And I really felt that having a big family was the way to go. Having lots of siblings for the kids was good. And I felt like my personal family was kind of diminishing. And so if we could build our family, that would be great. So it was a very sort of innocent move, I think, having another baby on my part. But it's sort of that and the move and then his new job and then COVID kind of all coincided at the same time. And kind of, I almost felt like from the time that our 4th baby was born, it was like a switch sort of flicked in my husband. And I didn't know what it was, but he became very, very angry and very angry at me, very angry at the baby. And he would stay away at work all the time. And we were still kind of in the midst of COVID at that point. So I was very isolated. And he was very involved in his job. And I had a new baby, and I had 4 kids at that point, very young.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any help. And the new friends who I'd made, I didn't see because of COVID. And he was staying out more and more, and very angry when he was at home. And I just didn't know what was going on. I was very sleep deprived, becoming very resentful. And I had no idea. Like I could not figure out what had happened to my sweet, kind, doting husband, who has seemed to do everything for me and go along with all my plans. And it was heartbreaking. I didn't really know what to do. And so I did all the things that I think a lot of women do. I said, I think we should go to therapy. At which point he was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to go to the therapist. Yeah. So at that point I thought, okay, if he's not going to go, then I'll go on my own. So I tried that. And the therapist pretty much said, I think you should get a divorce. Oh, it doesn't seem like your husband is wants to be with you, or whatever it was. I don't remember the exact words that he said, but I left feeling even worse than I had before. And every time my husband came home, and it became like later and later at night, we would stop, and the fighting just got horrible. And we'd never really had fights before. And in the past, when we'd fight, it would only be really quick, and it wouldn't be about us, it'd be about something else. And then we'd laugh and apologize. So this really intense fighting was just, I don't know where it came, it just seemed to kind of come out of nowhere. And when he came home, he would look at me with these cold eyes, like it was brutal. And I would go, if I could get a break from the kids, I would go on a walk around the neighborhood, and I would just sob. And I just thought, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what to do.
It just seemed like he had changed. Do I have it right? Like,
yeah,
there's a personality transplant, and your old guy was gone.
Yes.
And there was no trace of him, no clue as to how to get back what you had before.
Yeah.
Devastating. Horrible.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Painful.
Yeah.
Wow. So, and you tried therapy, and that wasn't really working. So, was there a moment when you thought, well, we can't go on like this?
Well, it seemed to get like worse and worse and worse. And I became unhappier and unhappier. And it just, like I said before, like I didn't know what to do. And I think that the major breakdown, there was a few in the last couple of years, but the real point where I thought that it couldn't go on like this, we were at the beach. We had this vacation planned, a family trip. And my sister actually had passed away on that trip, I found out. My mom called me to tell me that my sister had passed away. We knew it was coming. I just didn't know when. And my husband was completely checked out. I kind of went to him to get some comfort. Exactly. And I got this just cold. I remember him sitting across from the other side of the room with kind of his arms crossed, looking at me. And I was sitting on the bed, and he said, okay, do you want to talk about this? And I didn't even know where to start. I just felt so disconnected from him. And that whole trip, we were just fighting. And I asked him at the end of the trip, I said, do you want to take a family picture by the beach before we leave? And he said, no, I don't. I'm a lone wolf. I'm just going to go home. So I just took a family picture, me and the kids just took a selfie. And I thought, what is going on? And at this point, I had like completely in my head that he was having an affair. Like I couldn't figure out, what else it could be.
Yeah.
So we got home, and I think it was a few days later, I called him. He was on his way back from work. And in the old days, before it got really bad, he would always call me on his way home from work. And he'd stopped doing that a little while before. But I called him, and we had this awkward conversation. And I said to him, if you don't even call me on your way home, how am I going to know that I should make dinner? And he said, I don't even care if you make dinner for me. Don't even bother making dinner for me.
Oof.
And so we kind of hung up the phone. And then when he came home, I said to him, what is going on? This is absolutely, I cannot go on like this anymore. My sister died, one of the worst things that's happened in our whole relationship, and you weren't even there. I said, tell me, you have to tell me, are you having an affair? And he looked at me in the face. He said, I'm not having an affair, but I think I want a divorce.
Oh,
And it was, yeah, like a sucker punch, you know?
oh my gosh, awful.
Yeah.
So, and what was your reaction at that point? Were you also feeling so low about your marriage that you wanted to end it? Or did it sound like a good idea at that time or tempting?
There had been points where I was tempted to have a divorce, but at that point, there was no way. In my mind, when he said that, I knew that divorce was not something that I wanted to do.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So this sounds awful. And I'm imagining your kids are suffering through this too, especially your youngest. You mentioned that your husband was really angry at the baby. And
Mm.
how was this affecting your 4 kids?
Yeah, it was really hard. I think it was right around that time, maybe that weekend. Well, after he'd said about the divorce, I said to him, do you want to have a pizza party? The kids would love to have a pizza party. And he really obviously didn't want to, but he kind of went along with it. And he was sitting on the couch, and my daughter tried to give him a hug, and he just kind of pushed her off, like, don't touch.
Oh,
He didn't want to be around us, period.
wow.
And he was very angry. He would have explosive kind of fits at the kids if they were whining. My son was whining about something, some apple juice or something, and my husband just exploded. He pushed me out the way, grabbed my son, and was yelling at me as well. Are you not going to do something about this? And just the anger was hard to be around for all of us.
Well, especially seeing your daughter get crushed like that, right? Her, trying to hug her daddy, and it's just hard for your mama heart to watch that
Yeah.
happening. Okay,
Yeah.
so what happened next?
So the divorce thing, lingered in the air for a little bit. I said to him, I don't want to get a divorce. I understand our marriage is in a really, really bad spot. I mean, I was kind of up and down. I'm not, I didn't really say in that much of a calm tone, but my underlying thread to him was that I didn't want to get a divorce, and I knew that we could be better and things could be better. But he was still very unhappy, and he made that clear that he didn't really want to be there. And so it was hard to be around. And he brought it up again a few weeks later. He said, I'm just not happy. And so I spent a lot of time thinking, and eventually I just came to me like, I cannot keep this man like stuck in this house if he's not happy. So we met up and we talked, and I said to him, look, I'm not going to keep you here against your will. I'd rather that you stay. I love you. I want to be with you. But if you need to go,
Wow. Wow.
I'm not going to hold you back.
That's incredible. I'm very impressed by that, because that's a very surrendered point of view, right? You weren't going to try to control where he physically lived, given the misery that you were all enduring at this point.
Right.
Very, very generous thing to say, really. How did he respond to that?
He said, and I feel sad actually thinking about it, but he said to me, because I said to him, I love you and I want you to be happy. And he said to me, I don't think you really love me. Yeah. And he said, I know you love the kids, but I don't think that you have ever really loved me. Yeah.
Wow. Ouch.
So I said to him, I do. And I can see how you think that. And I'm going to prove it to you that I love you.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's an inspiring moment right there. Because you and I wouldn't be talking right now if you hadn't succeeded with that. So I have a glimpse of how this story ends, but what a low moment, and good for you for finding the resources to be so calm and intentional about what you were saying to him, and in preserving the opportunity to save your marriage and fix your marriage. instead of maybe trying to hurt him back because you were so hurt at that moment.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Well, I knew that wasn't going to help me. I tried that.
Okay. All right. All right. You've been there and done that. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
So eventually, he said to me, I'm not ready to completely move out. I'm not ready to get my own place. I think I'm going to stay with a friend 2 nights a week from work.
Oh. And you were thinking, I said that, but I didn't. I was hoping you wouldn't really move. Probably.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow. But he really did decide to leave.
So the next day he came back and I said, are you going to move? Did you talk to your friend? And he said, yeah, and I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave tomorrow.
Awful.
It was terrible. It was the worst.
Yeah. It sounds really bad. So he left, and how was that? Did things improve at all when he had these extra 2 nights out of the house? No.
So in the beginning, that all happened like the end of the summer last year. And it just, it didn't really improve. He was gone for those 2 nights. We didn't speak at all when he was gone. Very, very little communication. He would occasionally text, how are the kids? I would get that, but we didn't talk on the phone. And when he came back, he was very cold. He wouldn't touch me. He wouldn't look at me, really. There was no physical contact. And he is such a warm, loving, tactile person, that it was just, I mean, it was bad before, but it kind of got even worse, if that's possible. It was just very cold.
Did you ever do any exploration about like maybe what had happened to him, right? Because it seems like something's wrong with him. Did you ever like Google, like, okay, what does my husband have, or something like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I noticed him with, I don't even remember what it was, but I had definitely come up with I have it. I know exactly what's wrong with him. I found it. It was like angry husband syndrome or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So he's really incredibly cold and incommunicado, and he has angry husband syndrome, and you're basically separated. What happened next?
So I hadn't found your program. I was reading a lot of books at that point, a lot of how to save your marriage, different things, and I hadn't stumbled upon you at that point. But the one thing I did kind of think about at that time was just be as nice as possible, be as sweet as possible, be as kind as possible, no fighting.
Yeah.
So the arguments like pretty much stopped unless I thought he was lying about something, and then I couldn't control myself. But it was calmer. There was none of this like explosive fighting that we had.
Yeah.
But it was getting to a point where I was like, are we going to continue like this forever? He's staying with his friends. And he'd even shown me a picture of the guy that he was staying with, right? And I thought, are we going to live like this forever? He's, it doesn't seem to be getting better. It's not getting worse, but it's not getting better.
Yeah.
And I'd been through all the kind of programs and the books, and, I wasn't seeing a lot of progress. And then I had heard about the 6 intimacy skills. Like it just popped up somewhere, someone's comment through Facebook. And so I got curious because I was really on this hunt, like what is going to help? And then I found your book. I listened to your book, and that was the first thing. And I just was like, oh my God, I have done all of these things wrong. And I could just see through, the things that I had done in our marriage, the control, the disrespect, the like demasculating him. And I could see, because at one point when I had said back, I love you, he'd said, it's not really love that I want, it's respect.
Oh.
And so after reading your book, I could kind of see why he didn't think I loved him, even though I was doing his laundry and I was making his dinner. And, and so reading that book, it just set off these light bulbs in my mind. And it it gave me some hope, because I had felt like I'd kind of hit a wall, as it were, of like making things better in this kind of pseudo separation. Like the fighting was done, but the connection that I was so craving wasn't there, and I didn't know how to restore that. And so once I at least had the awareness of what it was from his side that was blocking it, I could see that possibly there were some things that I could do to open up the intimacy and the connection back again. And that gave me this kind of like renewed hope, because I thought, is he going to stay with his friend, for 2 days a week? So it gave me this kind of like oomph of like, okay, maybe this situation can change.
Yeah. So it sounds like you had gotten to feeling pretty hopeless, though, that it was going to change prior to that.
I felt like maybe it would, in a really, because of all the other books I was reading, I thought maybe it will. And I know these things take time, but it just felt like I was kind of treading water.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really, going anywhere.
Yeah. No, so you got this jolt of motivation and hope and inspiration. What did you start doing differently than you had been doing things?
So I started doing quite a few things differently. I started issuing a lot of apologies.
Yeah, good one to start with. Very brave, very brave. So what did you say?
So I apologized for being disrespectful about a lot of things in our relationship, and it would kind of come out in these emotional conversations that we had about what was happening. And I pretty much apologized for anything that I could see that was on my side of the street.
Wow.
And there was a lot. And the more I apologized, the more things that came up. And it felt good. It felt good to clean up my side of the street. Wow. And I could see that it worked as well. And I could see that he needed that.
When you say it worked, what do you mean?
I guess I mean that he softened. Every time I issued an apology like that, something changed inside of him.
What are some of the topics you apologized about? What were some of the specifics?
The controlling, that I controlled having kids so fast, that I pushed him into some things that he wasn't necessarily ready for. Yeah. Because during the period of time where we would discuss, and we did have these state of the unions about him leaving for the 2 nights a week, he would say things that before I found you didn't make a lot of sense. Like he would say, I've never done anything for myself. Or I just need time to do things that I want to do. I've never had a chance to do that. And so being able to apologize and say, I'm sorry I apologize for being disrespectful when I insisted we have more children and you weren't really ready for that. Huge. It just opened up these conversations, which kind of took us into, this deeper connection that at least I was seeing probably he felt the first time what was underneath all of the frustration that he had, and the resentment and the anger.
Wow. He must have been surprised that how did he react?
Well, the first time I apologized for being disrespectful was actually not one of these blanket level apologies. It was actually a very specific incident where we were in a snowstorm and he was meant to be coming home. He said he was going to come home and he didn't come home. And then he ended up coming home much later. And I had called him and said, are you coming home for dinner? And he said, no, I already ate. And I sort of went off on him on the phone. I yelled at him, screamed at him. I was just so angry that I was here with the kids. And goodness knows what he was doing.
Yeah.
And in the morning, when we woke up, I had really just listened to your book. And I thought, I'm going to try this out. So I rolled over and I said to him, I apologize for being disrespectful last night when I yelled at you for coming home late. I trust you. I know that you were just having dinner with your friends. And, I don't want to control what you do. And
Wow.
that was the first time that I had used that at all. And he got up and locked the bedroom door and initiated
Oh,
physical intimacy with me, which was like the first time in the longest time that he had touched me.
oh my gosh. It is the best aphrodisiac on the planet, isn't it? That respect. Wow. Great job, Sophia. I love that story. Very powerful. So speaking of having hope, right? You thought, okay, this is working. This is working for you.
Yeah, for sure. I thought, wow, I'm onto something.
And then you got kind of hooked. You started apologizing more and more and
I did. Yeah.
going back further and further. And you could see he was softening. So yeah, that was very exciting, I bet.
It was, but we still had this kind of lingering thing about him leaving.
Yeah, it's not like everything is fine now. This was
Right.
just the beginning. So, and what else did you start doing that was different than what you had been?
So I found you, and then I started the apologies. And then quite quickly after that, I found out this big bomb, that I this is what started it. So I started expressing desires, which I hadn't done at all. So I had tried to say, I would love to go away for my birthday. My birthday was coming up, and my mom had offered to fly over and watch the kids so we could go on vacation. And, back in my head, I was like, there's absolutely no way my husband wants to go on vacation with me. But, I want to try this out.
Yeah.
So I said to him, I would love to go away. And he sort of looked at me with his cold eyes and said, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. And I said, okay, I hear you, but I would love to celebrate myself. And he kind of looked at me and was like, I know, that would be nice for you. And then for the rest of the day was really strange. Like, he didn't want to talk to me. He didn't want to be around me at all. So I found him in the house, and this was kind of I wasn't following your program exactly, but I sought him out and I said to him, what is going on? It's like, you don't want to, why won't you go on vacation with me? I really want to go on vacation. And he said, I just can't. There's no way I can go on vacation with you right now. I don't even feel comfortable sleeping in the same bed as you. And I was like, okay. And he said, I still think that I really want to get a divorce.
Oh.
This had been like a whole 6 months after. And I thought things were getting better, and then been these glimpses of hope. So I left the house and I drove to the store, and I just thought that this gotta be someone else in the picture. Like, I'd been thinking it for a long time. I'd been trying to not focus on that. A few people had said to me, he's got to be seeing someone. It was my initial fear that he'd been seeing someone. But then he'd showed me the picture of his friends that he was staying with. He'd done all this, trying to shut and prove to me that he wasn't. But I just thought, why is he saying that he feels uncomfortable staying in the same bed as me when he just initiated intimacy with me? Like, what's going on? So I called him when I was at the store. I called him and I said, I cannot understand why you're saying this. Like, none of it makes any sense. The only thing that would make sense if you're seeing someone else. And he eventually said, yeah, I am. So I think out of all of the moments over the last 2 years, that was the worst.
The lowest moment.
The absolute lowest moment. Yeah.
Awful. Oh, yeah. You must have been devastated.
Yeah, completely. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut.
Absolutely.
I didn't know what to do. I didn't think I could go home. I didn't want to see him. I had no idea. At that point, I thought, this is it. But I was really lucky that I had found you about a month before. I think that's when it was. So I at least knew in my back pocket the things not to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what were some of the things that you were thinking, okay, that's what I'm not going to do?
Well, so I called him back. Like I called him back right away and I said, I'm not going to kick you out. This doesn't change that I still want to stay married.
Wow.
Um,
Oh,
and I
amazing.
said, I don't think I can come home right now. I don't know where I'm going to go. But, and that was just for the day. I just couldn't face seeing him at that very point. Of course, I did go home later on that night. And when I did go home, I said to him, I know you're a good man.
Mm.
And I know that you would not have done this unless our marriage was in a really bad state. And I take
Oh,
responsibility for that
wow.
too.
Whoa, wait a minute. Okay,
Yeah.
let's talk about that. You said, I know you're a really good man. You would not have done this except that our marriage was in a bad state, a very bad state. And I take responsibility for that. He's the one
Mhm.
that's having the affair. How did you get there?
I don't know. I just knew him. And I know that he was a good man. And I'd lost sight of that. And so I knew that to yell and scream and blame, and firstly, it wasn't going to get me anywhere.
No.
And secondly, I had this just like overwhelming compassion for him at that moment.
Wow.
Thank goodness. And that, I think, was the turning point, because I
Wow.
think that honestly had been what was holding him away from me, the guilt. Um, and why he couldn't, like, now I can look back and I can see that's why he couldn't look at me. That's why he couldn't
Yeah.
share a bed with me, because of the conflicting things that he was doing, I guess,
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, um, he, yeah, probably may have had some fear that you were going to be
Mm,
wanting to punish or kick him
mm,
out, all the things that you
yeah.
said you weren't going to do. So
Mm,
the way you showed up, I can see why that would be magical and it'd be a big turning point for your marriage.
yeah.
It's
It really
sounds
was.
almost superhuman. It sounds saint-like.
Well, I mean, I was crying while I was saying it. I mean, I wasn't like completely dignified.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah. That's understandable though. It
Yeah.
still is it was incredibly generous and wise. From my standpoint, I'm very impressed you were able to do that. What a moment of clarity you had in that
Mm,
moment of horrific pain. You
yeah.
saw how you wanted to show up and you were able to do it.
I think I saw, even in that pain, the goal.
Yeah.
And I saw that how I acted in that moment, and in the moments from there until, the end, that what I needed to do was to act in alignment with the goal that I had. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and the illusion was really big at this point that you might really lose him. I mean, I'm sure you also felt some fear. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and he said to me, do you want me to tell you about her? And I said, I don't want to give that woman any oxygen. And,
Great. Brilliant.
and so there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of fear. And, he didn't stop going over there. He continued through the period, and,
Oh,
even after I found out. And that's, I think, what made, the first time, I remember the first time where he decided to go. And it would always be this thing where I would get anxious. Is he going to leave or not? And I would always try, like, tonight, I'm not going to ask him. I'm going to just, continue like it's a normal night. And I could never hold it back. And I would always ask him, are you going to leave tomorrow?
yeah.
And the first night in the first week after I found out about the other woman, when I said to him, are you going to leave tomorrow? And he said, yes. I
Oh,
mean, that was probably the worst time, um,
oh, yeah,
just,
definitely.
mm, yeah.
Definitely. So you must have had a lot of feelings about that.
Yeah, it was funny because I tried the best I could while he was gone on those 2 nights not to think about her, not to think about what they were doing, and just to think about, me and what I wanted. And I dove head first into the skills, like my life depended on it. I had the gift of desperation.
Yes.
Yeah, that was my big focus was the skills and the program.
Wow. I love that. The gift of desperation. Yeah.
The gift of desperation. And I think also, like, whether it was self-preservation, like the thought of what he was doing at that point, it didn't even cross my mind. It was probably like blocked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is good self-preservation, amazing self-preservation. Because there's an enormous temptation to shop for pain or, to have your brain go there and stay there, really, to think about that.
Right.
So that's remarkable that you're able to stay out of that and just dive into the skills. So what skills did you reach for?
All of them.
Okay.
So the respect one was huge for me because I definitely know that was probably what got our marriage into the crisis that it was in. So that was the skill that I used while he was around a lot. Whatever, I would let him, I would pretty much allow him to lead whatever he wanted to do. A lot of whatever he thinks, a lot of apologies, like I just mentioned before, about times that I was disrespectful. And then when he wasn't at home, the skills that I used most was self-care. I used those 2 days to really think about, what am I going to do on these 2 days to make me feel good, to make me feel like myself, to kind of connect myself with the fun version of myself that I was before I got into this situation. So I would go out with girlfriends, go out for lunch, try and get a babysitter to come, massage, get my hair done. Those just little things that, for a moment or for a little gap in time, I could feel myself. Because a lot of my time was consumed with this situation.
Yeah, that's right. It can be very exhausting, very time consuming.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, when this is going on. There's a lot of emotional drama. It takes up
a lot.
bandwidth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Self-care was huge.
What's that was huge?
Self-care.
Self-care was huge. Yes. So lots of respect and lots of self-care. And how did he respond?
He responded very well to the respect. Another thing that I really tapped into was listening for his heart message. And that was huge in connecting us. There was an incident where it was one of the first times that he had gone away, and my daughter was sick. And I had texted him, or we'd been on the phone about her being sick, and I was actually feeling like pretty resentful that he was away and I was with the kids and they were sick, and
sure.
And he was kind of getting frustrated at me about things that I should do with her to make sure that she's okay, and texting me about that. And in the back of my mind, I was like, hey, you're not even here. Like, and I got, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But then I thought, I wonder what his heart message is here. So I kind of got a little bit reflective, and I texted him and said, it must be really hard for you to be away from the kids. I know you must miss them. And I promise I'll do everything to make sure that she's okay.
Oh my God.
And he texted me back like right away, and he was like, it's so hard to be away from the kids.
Oh.
So, and that was just, it was really amazing to connect with him in those kind of ways. And when I could listen for the heart message, it was like an instant connection. And we had another moment like that. We were texting back and forth one of the times that he was gone. And I said, it must be so, he said something. And I said, it sounds really confusing, the situation that you're in right now. And he texted me right back and he said, it is hard. It's really hard. And it's really confusing. And it was just these little moments where I felt okay, we're in this together. We're kind of on the
Yeah.
same team. It
Yes.
hadn't been for so long.
Oh,
So
it must have felt like $1,000,000 when you got those responses because you knew you were creating emotional safety, is what I
mhm.
hear too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were seeing a glimpse of that man you fell in love with and married.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he started to come back more and more. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see why. Because he felt so seen and understood too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was hard for him to be away from his kids. So that's,
It
yeah.
was. Yeah. And now I found, because we talk about it pretty openly now, the situation. And he was like, it was terrible. I never wanted to be away from the kids. I missed you. Well, it wasn't you guys. I wasn't involved in the miss. He didn't miss me at that point, but he was like, I missed the kids so much. It was so hard to be away. And so for me to kind of validate that experience and to hear that, I think I felt
Yeah.
finally heard.
Yeah. And it was a moment where you were seeing the best in him as a
Mhm.
father too, right? Instead of seeing the
Yeah.
worst. Like, gosh, you
Mhm.
left your kids.
I know.
As opposed to this must be really hard for you to be away. That's
Right.
it's a big shift. Yeah. So beautiful.
Yeah. And
Huh.
like with that as well, I started to use spouse fulfilling prophecies around him and being a great dad. And I would say things to him and try and catch him in those great moments. And I would say to him, you're such a great dad. You're doing this, that, and the other. Or like, it was so great when you connected with so and the daughter or whatever today. And the first time I said to him, you're such a great dad, he looked at me and he said, do you really think I'm a good dad? And I was like, and it was a stretch. At that point, it was a stretch.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It's not a bold-faced lie at that point. Yeah. All right.
it was a stretch because I hadn't really seen much of it at that point, So I knew he wanted to be.
Yes.
Or I think I
Yes.
knew he wanted to be. And so the more I said it, the more he stepped up. And he started coming home earlier on the weekends to take my son to karate. And he started doing more with the kids. He made them a swing hanging from the tree. And the more he did that, the more
The more you could say, yes, you're
the
a
more I
great
could
dad.
take him.
You
Yeah.
take our son to karate. You made that
Yeah.
tree swing. What did you
Yeah.
say in that moment when he said, do you really think I am? Like, how did you respond to that?
I said to him, you really are a great dad. And then I think I said, because there was a lot of conversations, at this point, I think I know that I definitely offered him a very heartfelt apology for, ever putting down his parenting before.
Wow.
And because in the past, I thought, if I point out all the things that he's doing wrong, surely he's going to want to change them.
Yeah. And did that work?
No,
it never worked.
not at all.
It worked for me either.
If I talk about all the things that his dad did wrong, and so he should avoid doing that, that's definitely going to help. And
yeah.
no,
that didn't help either. Okay.
Yeah. So I had said some terrible things about his parenting. So when I kind of flipped it on its head and started saying what an amazing dad he was, he was kind of shocked.
Way to focus on your faith that this could be so. You spoke it into him and he became it.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Remarkable. Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Any other skills that you brought to bear in this situation?
Definitely a lot of gratitude. I started to really feel it too. I started to tell him how grateful I was for this beautiful home that he worked so hard to provide for us. And I would send him these gratitude texts while he was gone. I'm so grateful for this beautiful house. And I would send him pictures. And I would say, I appreciate you working so hard and I'm proud of you and all of that. And I used a lot of these spouse fulfilling prophecies too, like I just mentioned. And the one that I really wanted to focus on because of the situation that we'd been in, because of the lies, and because I'd felt so betrayed, I wanted to feel trust in him. So I started to say it to him, I trust you. And it was, in the beginning, it felt totally nuts because here he is completely lying to me for the last however long. But I wanted that. And I knew that he was a good man. And I knew that he was a trustworthy man. It's just that in this situation, he had lied. So I told him I trusted him a lot. And the more that I told him that, the more that he showed me that I could trust him. And it was by these small things in the beginning. It was him saying, I'll be home at 8 o'clock in the morning to take our son to karate. And he was home at 8 o'clock in the morning to take our son to karate.
Wow.
And saying, I'll pick up this thing on the way home, and he would do it. And I'd say, thank you so much. Or, when he said, I'll be home at 8 o'clock, I'd say, thank you, I trust you. And so trying to find ways to drop that in at every point was a game changer, I think.
So he responded to you a lot better, it sounds like. When you
oh my gosh. Yeah. Things changed really quick. Yeah.
Oh, so and then it changed. He changed. It sounds like you also changed. It softened your heart. Is that right?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, completely. And my husband now talks about the old me and the new me.
Oh, he does. I was going to ask if he's acknowledged, right? Because this is a significant transformation from how you used to show up in your marriage, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah. He said, now you're like this. And, before you were like that. And he says all the time, you're a completely different person.
Did he ever question you at one point? Like, what happened to you? Why are you so different? Did he ever say anything like that? Or
he knew that I was taking a course about marriage. And I was kind of open with him about that at one point. I said, look, I want to save our marriage, and I've been taking some courses. And so he did know something about it. He doesn't know the name of the program or anything. But he definitely acknowledged the changes for sure. Yeah.
That must have felt great, because you really said some brave things, some very courageous, very vulnerable things to him as a result of learning about the intimacy skills.
Yeah.
So, all right. So what happened? You're still separated. He's still having this affair. Let's get out of that. Let's get to.
I know.
It still has to be very painful on a daily basis, right, for you?
Yeah. So it was probably about 3 to 4 months. Well, even after a few months of after I found out, he said to me, "This isn't going to last much longer. Just keep doing what you're doing, and you can relax." Yeah.
Oh.
Of course. Yeah.
Music to your ears, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you hang up the phone and like start doing, like somersaults or like cartwheels or something? Like, yay.
Yeah.
This is working.
It did feel good. I still was very much like, I can't relax until it's done,
Sure, of course.
But I could see that things had changed pretty dramatically, and that I knew that he wanted to be here. So that was at least a good feeling.
Yeah.
And then, so it was about 4 months. He ended up wrapping it up, the affair, and came home full time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What a feeling that must have been for you.
Yeah, it was.
And did it feel stressful to have him? Not stressful to have him back, of course, because he was there anyway, part-time, but some women will share that it was easier to practice the skills when he was gone, and then it felt like a whole new ball game once he was back. Did you have any experience like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about that.
So what happened, 2 things that happened when he was home full time was, one, all of that, me not thinking about the affair.
Yeah.
When he was gone, it all kind of hit me. And I started really thinking about it, which I wasn't expecting. Like, I started kind of, what did they do? And where did they go? And, all of that sort of ruminating thoughts, which I wasn't expecting that to happen. And then also some resentment.
Yeah.
crept in,
Yeah. As a mere
And
mortal woman, this is going to
yeah.
happen, right? Yeah.
And then I kind of thought he was going to come home and like apologize. And I'm so sorry that I did this to you. And the grand apology never really materialized.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So you're waiting for that. It never came.
It never did. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, in little bits here and there for sure. And I know that he is very sorry about it. And we've talked about it a lot, but the initial kind of adjustment was a little bit harder than I thought it would be.
So is it fair to say that, because you said earlier, what did you say? I had the something of desperation. It was a great phrase. The gift of desperation. You had the gift of desperation. And then once he came back, that gift of desperation was less present. Is that?
Yes.
And so then there was like, I guess maybe the safety to feel this resentment and also to think about what had happened during the affair,
Right.
all the things they had. So yeah, it makes sense, right? It's so valuable to hear these pieces, Sophia. Thank you so much for sharing them so authentically, because I think that is just natural and normal for a mere mortal woman. Any human might find that happens once the gift of desperation has departed. You are no longer so desperate. Do I have this right? Am I saying this?
Yeah, that's completely true. And my husband even commented on it. At one point he said to me, "Your wife skills are slipping."
Oh, oh.
Because I think like I was like using the skills 100%. And then when I felt, okay, I can relax, I let them go a little bit, some of them. And I think
my husband said the same thing to me before too. Yeah, I know a good book you should read. Oh my God. He means my book. So yeah. Yeah. So, okay. But carry on. I like what you're saying.
Yeah. So I think that, what's actually been really cool since he's been home is that I've still been really into the skills, and I've realized that they are for me. The skills are for me, and they're not a manipulation. They're not a get your husband home quick. They're like a code of how do you live your best life, and how do you live, in a way that makes you feel good. And for me. And so the adjustment of him being home and the kind of the aftermath of the breakdown has been, for me, the most important part of the journey, because it's a sort of, it's been a healing after a big accident.
Yeah.
And I don't think in the time where I was working on my marriage that I was really 100% working on myself. I was really working on my marriage, which was great because it needed a lot of work. But since he's been home, it's been the time where I've been able to turn that focus back on myself and use the skills for me. So that's been pretty cool.
That is cool, because I think as I'm listening to you, and I think someone else who's listening might say, well, it does sound like it was a get your husband home quick, maybe not a manipulation, but that's how you used it and it worked. So what do you mean when you say, what's the difference between how you were practicing the skills before, when you say you're working on your marriage and now it's just about you? How is it different?
Yeah, I don't really want to think of it as manipulation, because it wasn't. I love my husband and I wanted to do anything that I could do to get him home.
Yeah.
But in the process of that, it was very much focused on him.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And maybe it's because there wasn't enough time between I don't know. I don't even think it's to do with the timeline of it. I just think I really wanted to save my marriage. And I didn't really understand until the reflection of this whole process that it was never really about my marriage. It was about me. And that I needed to fix myself, and would I have wanted to be married to myself 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Probably not.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's why I think your book and your program is so great, because you start with self-care, and that's the most important thing, to feel good about yourself in your own skin. And when you can do that, you want to give your best to everybody around you. You don't need to control anybody. You don't need to, be horrible to anybody to get your way, or whatever it might be. You can just, be the light.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Beautifully said. Beautifully
yeah.
said. Yeah. And you wouldn't have wanted to be married to yourself, it sounds like. And maybe it was even, I know for me, it just wasn't that much fun to be around myself pre-skills, right? Like I didn't like hearing my voice, the way I
Yeah.
sounded, and things I was saying. So I think I hear you saying you enjoy this version of Sophia, being around her more
Oh
than
my
you did.
gosh. Yes. And I know when the old one comes back, like I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel good. You know?
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's a self-care check, like, oh, what do I need? Yeah. How do I feel?
Yeah.
So what is your marriage like now though?
Oh my gosh. It's great. It's amazing. It's really what I wanted. And and it's fun. Like we laugh so much.
Oh,
And we can talk about everything. And my husband says there's nothing we can't talk through. And we talk about everything. We talk on the phone all the time. The physical intimacy is amazing. He's kissing me all the time. We're dancing. It's just, we're so connected. And he says things all the time, like, I'm so excited about our future. Yeah, it's really awesome.
oh, congratulations. That is so inspiring. And I don't hear, or let me ask you though, do you ever have flashes of fear about what might happen in the future? Does it ever feel like that it could come back, the affair could come back, or that he'd want to leave again or get a divorce?
Um, a little, I guess. I don't I don't know if I would ever come back, but I the fear is not big enough to get in the way.
Mm.
And I just know that if anything was to happen down the line, that at least I've given it everything that I could. And I would rather have an open heart and be fully in the marriage than hold back because I'm afraid,
Yeah,
you know.
beautiful. Yeah, amazing. I love hearing that. And how about your kids? How has this impacted them?
No, it's really amazing. They're so much more connected with their dad. And my little son, we were in the car the other day and he said, is daddy coming home this night? And then he said, oh, daddy comes home every night now, doesn't he? And it
Oh,
was just the sweetest thing. And it just reminded me that, this is so important. The families are so important. And, it's a big undertaking to
yes.
turn your marriage around,
It's a
but it's
big
so worth it.
undertaking.
Yeah,
Yeah. You must have felt really proud in that moment that daddy
I
comes home
did.
every night. Yeah. To be able to
Yeah,
give that to your son. How old is
yeah.
your son?
He's 4.
Mm, he
Yeah,
knows everything already, right? Like he knows
yeah.
daddy comes home every night now. Oh,
Yeah.
beautiful. So, and what is your tip for a woman who is where you were, where he's moved out, at least in part. He said he wants a divorce. She knows there's an affair going on. She's feeling hopeless.
Mhm.
What's your best tip for her? What should she do to get where you are now, where there's so much laughter and confidence and such a bright future, and
Mhm.
uh, the kids feel safer?
I would say stick with it. Have the faith over fear. Feelings change. So many people said to me, "Oh, he doesn't love you anymore," and I just couldn't see that being the end. And you know, I think look forward to your future and create that vision and hold on to that vision and realize that it's a process. Like, it takes time. In the beginning, I wanted it like tomorrow. Like,
Yeah.
we fix this tomorrow, like right now on my time. But it doesn't work like that. Like, it takes a long time to get into this mess, and it takes a little while to get out. And there's a reason for that, because the time that's spent in the transformation is so worth it, because you need that to kind of last with you,
Yeah.
with marriage. Yeah. So take your time. Relax.
So the gift of desperation was not so bad in hindsight that you had. Okay. Yeah. I love that. And what do you think you would say if you could go back in time and talk to Sophia and tell her what you know now? Yeah. What would you say?
I would say it's going to be okay. Relax, sleep, that was my biggest thing. It was the journey. I wanted it so quick. I wanted it to be fixed. And so I think I would just tell myself, just enjoy the process, take care of yourself, have fun wherever you can, laugh, find those joyful moments, and let go of their timeline, your husband's timeline. They have a process, you have a process, and
enjoy the process.
Enjoy the process. Trust it. It will all work out. And,
No, I love it, because I think I hear you saying that you did enjoy this journey in some ways.
In some ways, yeah. It was intense and had a lot of very emotional moments, highs and lows. Mm-hmm. But it was transformational, and there's no way that my marriage would be where it is now if I hadn't gone through that. It would never, I speak to my husband about it all the time, and we both agree that there is no way that we could have the marriage that we have today if we hadn't gone through what we've gone through in this last year.
I think I hear you saying that you're grateful for this breakdown.
I am, yeah. Unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
It's very painful, and I would rather have not gone through it, but I am grateful. Yeah, I'm grateful.
You wouldn't trade what you have now?
No.
For anything, it sounds like.
No.
Wow.
I'm very grateful to you and your program.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. I'm grateful to get to hear this delicious story, Sophia. Amazing story. Very inspiring and just remarkable. I definitely do want to give you a wife award. This is okay, that's just my mouse, but really you deserve and this is such a victory, such an important victory. And I'm just happy to get to recognize and celebrate with you and do my happy dance for you and for your 4 children and any future children I guess you might be having, because I know you wanted a big family. Oh,
no,
you shook your head.
We're done.
We're done. Okay, that's it. Okay. All right. Well, it's a huge accomplishment. It takes a lot of courage to do what you did. So very well done.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes.
Relationship advice, the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice, the worst relationship advice of the week.
And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award. And the advice that I'm grumbling about this week was sent to me by a student who asks, Does this qualify as worst relationship advice? And the answer is yes. Yes, it certainly does. And she sent me a pithy sounding quote that someone made into a graphic with a woman looking into a cloudy sky. So this is your shout out, your anonymous shout out, of course, for helping me create the podcast by sending me this slice of bologna for my podcast sandwich. I feel the love and it's coming right back at you. Thank you. So the quote reads, "A strong woman doesn't have time for nonsense. If she feels you don't care, she won't beg or try to make it work. Instead, she'll move on." So it's super uninspiring, first of all. It ends with a woman who has to be strong because she's alone, because she felt the man that she was with didn't care. And feelings are facts, right? So she didn't try to make it work because it was all his fault, obviously. She's just going to find someone better. So there's no nonsense. There was no point in working on it because it wasn't her fault at all. It was all him. This is what strong women do. Not. No. This is what women do when no one has ever taught them the 6 intimacy skills, and they've been so hurt for so long that they think it's hopeless. They act on their fear and their hurt and their resentment. When they're not strong enough to self-reflect or ask what they might be doing that's pushing him away, this is what they do. They default to a defensive position of an ultimatum that if he doesn't show he cares, she's going to leave. And that's certainly a message that gets reinforced a lot. I hear it all the time. All relationships are going to have challenges, and walking away every time that one comes up would certainly be lonely and exhausting, no matter how strong you are. I thought I was strong back in the battle days when I was on the brink of divorce, but it was more like harshness. I was just angry and hard. And walking through the challenges in my marriage and learning how to show up softer has given me more strength than I ever imagined. And for those reasons, the advice that a strong woman doesn't have time for nonsense. If she feels that you don't care, she won't beg or try to make it work. Instead, she'll move on. That is the very, very worst relationship advice I've heard all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, we'll be talking about what makes a marriage last forever. And in the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that 33 years ago, I married the great love of my life who makes me laugh every day. He also edits this podcast. So happy anniversary, John.